Okay. I want to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you for being patient. We're running about a minute behind, but we can make up for it. At this time, I would like to call on Mr. Terry Draper to lead us in a pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. And now I'd like to call on Mr. T.W. Allen to read our mission statement.
Beaufort County Schools will provide quality educational programs and services to ensure student, academic, and vocational success.
Thank you. Ms. Duke, do we have any public comments? Okay, we're going to breeze on by there. And now, if you haven't had an opportunity, make sure you have refreshed your agenda and look at that, and then I'm going to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right. We've got a motion and a second. You have that, Lisa? Mm-hmm. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. We're going to move right on to our minutes. Is there anybody who needs to recuse themselves from that meeting? Was everybody here?
Wait a minute now, it's the 7th, I was not here. No, we're all right. We're fine.
We're good? All right.
Yep.
Could I have a motion to approve our minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. We are missing Mr. Bcboe and Mr. Oliver tonight, but they would send their congratulations to all the award winners are about to have. So now can I turn this over to Ms. Howard? Yes, I'm sorry, and I'm so sorry. Yes, Mr. Williams is going to be our public recognition board member. I'm sorry, Terry.
No, I didn't know if Michael was coming or not.
No, he might be, but he's late, so he is trading spots with you.
Good evening. This evening, we're going to be honoring both our character education nominees and winners for the month of December as well as January. We will start with the nominees from the month of December. The character trait that was recognized in our schools in the month of December was gratitude. And the nominees were from Chocowinity Middle School, Christopher Warren; from Chocowinity Primary, Skylar Bove; from Eastern Elementary, Marlette Broom; from John Cotton Taylor, Tracy Brown; from Northeast Elementary, Mary Evett; and from S.W. Snowden, Kamali Gardner. And the winner during the month of December for gratitude at the elementary level was Christopher Warren from Chocowinity Middle. If he will come forward. Christopher is a 5th grader at Chocowinity Middle School. His mother is Miss Brandy Reed, if she will stand. And he was presented by his teacher, Miss Natalie Leary. And Miss Leary wrote, "I would like to nominate Christopher Warren for the character trait of gratitude. Gratitude means to me being thankful, showing appreciation, and returning kindness. All of those attributes describe Chris. He is the first one in class to say thank you. Regardless of anything going on in the classroom, Chris is always kind to his teachers and classmates. An example of Chris showing gratitude towards his teachers and classmates was in music class. The students were playing musical chairs. Chris got out of the game but said to his teacher, 'This is fun. I'll help remove chairs since I'm out.' Instead of being upset or a poor sport, he noted how much fun he had had and offered to help the teacher. Chris is a great young man and a pleasure to have in class." We say congratulations to Chris.
We have just a couple of things for you, Christopher, and we have a certificate to acknowledge tonight, also a medal, and that's a wonderful trait to have. It's going to carry you far in life. Awesome. Do one more thing for me. Walk right around here to the board next to you. Just lay up and shake their hand.
Congratulations.
Great job, young man.
Congratulations.
So awesome. Right. Now, does he notice that here?
And when you get through with all of them, Christopher, you just have a seat. And we'll call you back up in a few minutes and have a picture with the superintendent.
Awesome.
At the middle school level for the month of December, our nominees were Riley Homberg from Chocowinity Middle; Northeast Elementary, Liam Lincoln; From P.S. Jones, Nash Pimpin. From S.W. Snowden, Jason Jones. And the winner at the middle school level was Jason Jones from S.W. Snowden. And Jason is a sixth grader at S.W. Snowden. His father is Mr. Jason Jones Jr., and he was presented by, I'm sorry if his father's here, and mother, if they will stand. All right, and he was presented by Mr. Jameson White. Okay. And Mr. White wrote, "The character trait for this month is gratitude. I proudly select Jason Jones for this great character trait. Jason took it upon himself to ask me for soprano saxophone lessons about a month ago. Over the course of this month, Jason has diligently worked to improve his tone and technique. He has constantly thanked me for an opportunity to learn the soprano saxophone. Gratitude is a trait that music directors seek when searching for ensemble performers. Never once has Jason complained about having to repetitiously do tone exercises. Playing an instrument takes much perseverance and discipline. One must be willing to keep in mind that gratitude is the key for success in music class. Congratulations, Jason. With much gratitude, I present you with the Character Trait Award for Gratitude."
Let me congratulate you first, congratulate you again. And we also have a certificate and a medal. And I'd like you to do the same thing if you would. Just walk around and shake the hand of the board. Let it speak.
Jason, congratulations. We're proud of you.
We are grateful that you show your gratitude. Good job.
Congratulations, sir.
At the high school level, the nominees were from the Early College High School, Lindsay Moore. From the Ed Tech Center, Antoinette Thompson. From Southside High School, Anna Purvis. And the winner at the high school level was Lindsay Moore from the Early College High School.
That's good right there.
And Lindsay is a ninth grader at the Early College High School, and her parents and guardians are Walt and Faye Ingalls, if they will stand. And she was presented by her teacher, Miss Kayla Shelton. And Ms. Shelton wrote, "Lindsay Moore is a student that has shown gratitude and appreciation in the classroom since the beginning of the year. Lindsay is eager to stay after school or even come in early before school to receive an extra opportunity for tutoring or review in her world history class. She is one of a handful that I can count on to stay every chance that she can. Every time she stays, she makes a point to thank her teacher for staying or coming in early to help her, and always with a smile on her face. Lindsay's world history class recently had a veteran come in and speak to her class about his experience in the Vietnam War. Lindsay was beyond thankful for this opportunity, so much so that when she saw the veteran enter the school, she jumped up and greeted him with a smile and a hug, thanking him for taking his time to share his story and to visit her class. She has also participated in service projects throughout the year that display her sense of gratitude. The Early College collected supplies for Craven Early College after Hurricane Florence, and they have just recently finished collecting supplies for a local homeless shelter. Lindsay eagerly contributed to both of these projects, which shows that she is grateful and thankful for what she has, and it shows her desire to help others as best as she can. Lindsay is a very pleasant person to be around and never want to take things for granted." We say congratulations.
I have something for you. Thank you for being such a fine example.
Okay, if you would just step down.
If you would, just read the board and then we'll come back for a vote. You want to do those all 3 and 3?
Congratulations, so proud of
Let's
you.
do this one.
Great job.
Congratulations.
So I invite Mr. Chief.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, we're going to do.
Yes, you have to get
You can just stay right here.
You have to
We're going to do those 3. You won't come back.
Yes, sir.
We're going to just say, you don't think you're going to get out without my superintendent.
We need those young folks in that picture to make it look good.
You guys saw this?
Also smack behind the scenes.
You need a duck. You need a duck, Matt.
Thank you very much. Oh, you want to stop?
Yeah.
For the month of January, the character trait that was recognized in our schools is self-discipline. At the elementary level, the nominees were From Chocowinity Middle School, Jason Hunt. From Chocowinity Primary, Christina Perez Cazares. From Eastern Elementary, Yanalyn Teles Trejo. From John Cotton Taylor, Graham Spivey. From John Small, Carly Woolard. From S.W. Snowden, Janiyah Ham. And the winner at the elementary level was Graham Spivey from John Cotton Taylor. And Graham is a second grader at John Cotton Taylor. His parents are Roger and Jennifer Spivey, if they will stand. And he was nominated by his teacher, Miss Henson. Okay. And she wrote, Graham Spivey is extremely responsible and self-disciplined. He truly exemplifies the JCT Tiger roar. He comes in every morning and follows procedures without hesitation. While others may need redirection, Graham continues to follow procedures. Throughout the day, he is focused on instruction, actively participating in the academic classroom. When there is a challenge, academic or social, he meets that challenge without exhibiting poor choices. He is a positive example to others. He does not hesitate to assist when the opportunity arises, but does not let it distract from his own responsibilities. We say congratulations to Graham.
Congratulations again, young man. We have a certificate, a medal, and I'm gonna let you walk right here. But first, I want you to just also know, that I'm gonna add something to this. This is one fine baseball player. Fine to the point, represented Washington as an all-star at state tournament this year. Wow. Don't leave him out of town. Fine baseball player.
I'm sure.
Right, yes, you want to know what it means? Yes.
Great job.
Graham, congratulations. I'm proud of you.
Congratulations. I'll have to remember when you're in the major leagues, I shook your hand.
Congratulations, sir.
That was awesome.
We'll be in the nursing home together.
Give him some good.
That's awesome.
At the middle school level, the nominees were from Chocowinity Middle, Zakiria Brown Boyd. From P.S. Jones, Niaja Warren. And from S.W. Snowden, Danielle Harrell. And at the middle school level, the winner was Niaja Warren from P.S. Jones, if she would come forward. Niaja is a sixth grader at P.S. Jones, and her mother is Miss Shawana Spencer, if she will stand. And she was presented by David Wellham, her teacher. And he wrote, Niaja has demonstrated self-discipline every day in my class, as well as working outside of school on her own. Niaja started on trumpet and worked hard every day to improve, practicing at home often. She had difficulties in the beginning, but kept working hard at it every day. Eventually, Niaja switched instruments, but all of her hard work is starting to really pay off. She has only been playing for a few weeks, but has already started to sound great. It takes a lot of self-discipline to keep working at something when you aren't initially successful at it. Way to go, Niaja. Her hard work and self-discipline have greatly benefited the P.S. Jones band. Congratulations.
Probably like a routine by now, but I'd like to congratulations again. And you can just read the board as well, and then we have some pictures in there. We have some fine examples. Congratulations.
Great job.
I'm so happy for you.
Congratulations, Niaja.
Congratulations.
At the high school level, the nominees were from Northside High School, Sheena Columbus, and from Southside High School, Marla Cutler. And the winner at the high school level was Sheena Columbus from Northside High School. She will come forward. And Sheena is a 12th grader at Northside High School. Her mother is Miss Audrey Reddick, if she will stand. And she was presented by her teacher, Miss Holly Allagood. Miss Allagood wrote, I have the pleasure of teaching Sheena Columbus for 2 class periods a day. Sheena works as hard as any student I have encountered to manage her own learning. She generally goes far beyond assignment requirements with tasks such as outlining reading material and note-taking, or organizing notes, bulleting her notes with passage references, and ensuring every assignment is submitted on time. She takes the extra steps to review return material, research and correct errors, and ask for clarity if she is unable to reach it on her own. She is one of the most conscientious, hardworking, and self-disciplined students I have had the pleasure to teach. It is refreshing to work with a student who clearly understands her own learning style and is unafraid of diligently working to reach the goals she sets for herself, often going the extra mile to get there. This self-discipline will serve her well as she moves on to preparing for and being a successful college student. We say congratulations, Sheena.
Same thing. I just feel honored to be able to stand beside you guys, listen to what the teachers have to say about it. It is a great group.
Congratulations, very happy for you.
Congratulations. You have a wonderful cheering section for you here tonight.
Congratulations.
If our other two winners would come forward for their picture.
Stay here.
Camera, you don't be on TV.
Come right on up here.
You want us?
At this point in our meeting, as much as I know you all would love to stay, this is the point in time where if you came for the character education part, and we are so thankful for all of you coming. It is your support that is one of the very reasons that these young people got these awards, and they could not do, not only without their teachers and principals, but your support as well. So I want to personally thank you all for coming tonight. But we are going to allow you, we'll take a couple minutes break and allow you to, if you've got better things to do, like eat dinner, homework, basketball, you can now go ahead and find your way out. Thank you for coming. And that's how you clear a room.
Absolutely.
Is security usually like that? I can't remember.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
He asked
Yeah, we usually, yeah, sometimes they just ask, do you need me to stay?
when he called to double check, he wanted to know when we're leaving. He was supposed to cover the basketball.
Oh, yeah.
The security guard.
I know the one at Washington got moved to tomorrow night because of wrestling, something.
He didn't say.
Yeah.
We need to remember that the thing at Northside is Friday
Friday
night.
night.
It's on my calendar to be there.
Kids
He invited me to go.
See y'all later.
Good night. Drive safely.
Board member updates.
He came.
Thank you.
I was thinking since Ms. Booth has an update.
Gosh. And there you go.
Wow.
Something I said?
I told Mac a couple to stay, but I was wrong.
All
I think
right.
we ought to just thank Randy and Mark for thanking us.
Randy, get in front of the camera, said it was somebody's ear.
Mark's like,
We'll keep right on going then. We're in the no action part, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Cheeseman.
Excellent, thank you very much. So at our last meeting, we talked about the policy for the directory information, and Ms. Duke and I had the pleasure of working with Mr. Thorpe, Attorney Thorpe, through the School Board Association, and he essentially said that you don't need to make any type of policy change whatsoever, and you do not have to release the information to the requesting party. You can actually decline their request. His area of concern was the consistency around doing that. So meaning, once you decline one, you decline all except for military in that regard. And so with that, what you have in your policy, I think, is still a rock-solid policy, and I don't think you need to have any other action on it right now. And of course, we would just move forward. If we feel as though the requesting entity should not have it, then we'll decline it in writing. All right?
sounds good.
We'll keep going. You
And this
again?
is for what, the release of information to outside schools and et cetera, right?
Yeah, student information,
part.
contact information.
Okay.
Yep.
On to the presentation about
And so I'm going to stand up and look look over your shoulder here, what you have in your possession, or what you have in front of you, is a rough draft, and that's part of why I brought it to you this evening. So tomorrow, Mr. Doan and I have been asked to meet with the county commissioners. Specifically, Brian Allagood and I met about 6 business days ago, and he sat down and he said, look, this first meeting, as you know, is not really to talk about capital, it's not really to talk about local expenditures or even see all of your pictures yet. He said, really, the commissioners just want somewhat of a smaller scale State of the Union. All right? So essentially, here's some thinking, and I'd like for you to take a look at this tonight, and then overnight, tomorrow morning, if you have some thinking that you'd like to change it, feel free, we can add and subtract. But in short, I think it's really important to introduce our Board of Education back to our county commissioners and insert T.W. Allen's photo there.
Send it to her.
All right, but.
Remember, we're doing all I can to help ourselves.
And I'm gonna ruin it.
All right, so love all of your portraits, and I took them right off of our own website, so please be mindful that your constituents can find your information on our own website. But I think you'll understand in a moment, with Mr. Allen joining the board, the county commissioners last spoke to you about your budget when there was a different chair, different board members, and so it's good to show them transition. Wanted to remind all of the county commissioners and their constituents that you do operate off of a 5-year strategic plan. So you are following a sense of guidance. So if you notice, I just documented what the vision was, but notice the 4 lines after that. Each one of these will actually be bulleted tomorrow, but every student in Beaufort County Schools will graduate. Every student has a personalized learning, every student in every classroom, and then the Beaufort County school system. This is your strategic plan, so these are your goals. Now, if you notice, of 3 of the 4, I put 100% behind it. Meaning, what is the commitment to all of this? Well, it's 100%, and as you go through this, very similar to our previous conversations, you'll recognize I'm going to ask your county commissioners with your blessing to fund us at 100%. All right? So considering 100% Beaufort County schools, we're all in. And what does 100% mean? Well, it means every child, every employee. And many times we always say it's all about children, but sure, we want desired student outcomes, but it's not just all about children. It's all about our essential personnel. It's all about the kids. But in totality, it's 100% all in. So then I'm going to ask the county commissioners something I asked you a few months ago. What does 100% of the time really mean? And so I've had a really great dialogue with 5 of the 7 county commissioners independently in my office, and very pro-education, but are they truly 100% all in? So considering that, we'll talk about traditions versus transitions. And so what are the rich traditions of Beaufort County that the county commissioners would like us to hold on to? But your transitions include T.W. Allen coming in, your transitions include personnel changes throughout the district, and your transitions, in fact, you have a new superintendent. So we'll talk about how that comes to a different vision. So although you're still operating off of the 5-year strategic plan, 2016 through 2021, transition in some of the personnel and the leadership may cause a different move. And so I'm going to ask them 3 theoretical questions for them to consider. How are we, including the county commissioners, knocking down the barriers that impede student success? So can they actually say to us and say to the public, by contributing to the school system, this is how we're knocking down those barriers for kids? How are we knocking down the barriers for our employees? And then even more so, as county commissioners, how are they promoting the mental health and well-being of our students, of our employees, and our community? So these three questions go back to those 4 or 5 bullet points under your strategic plan. And of course, your strategic plan is guided off of your State Board of Education goals. So your county commissioners also have their goals. And so what I'm really trying to do here is to help them understand, by investing in us as a school system, they're investing back into your community. And that's very important for them to have that mindset. So if you want to invest in 100% of your community, please invest in us 100%. Well, we're going to do this through new, authentic relationships. And we're going to do this through an open dialogue of communication. And later in this presentation, you're going to see that I'm asking them to form a joint education steering committee, meaning that your chair of the Board of Ed, your finance officer of the board, and the chair of the county commissioners and the county manager and I, we meet on a quarterly basis to talk about what's happening throughout the school year. Because they just don't recognize that when I open up an email, we could in fact lose $30,000 of Title II funding. They just don't see the mechanics of it. So in fact, instead of walking around once a year on the Capitol walkthroughs and then showing them pictures, if we meet on a quarterly basis, then they already know the story. And so then they can be more informed when talking with all of you about what our needs are. And of course, the authentic relationship is really also what I'm trying to provide to you. Give you as much information as you desire in order for you to have a greater opportunity to make decisions that are more impactful. And that's where Willie Mack's going to come in tonight and talk a little bit about school finance. So do your county commissioners understand that you operate off of a $70 million budget? But the key to this slide is not about 70 million. But if you notice, you have local funding, state funding, and federal funding. But if you also notice, I tell you June, September, and October. It's very important that our county commissioners understand that they are the first funding source in the calendar year for us. So we really don't know what our state finances are going to be until September. And if you remember, about 10 years ago, the state didn't actually approve it until almost October. So we always hope our legislators have a good year. But considering that, your federal funding does not drop any earlier than usually October. Sometimes, I don't know, when you have a government shutdown, you might not have it until December. And a few years back, some of the monies in some of the counties didn't drop in until almost January. So I think it's really important that our county commissioners understand that, yes, we operate off of a $70 million budget, but in fact, they are responsible for the first decision of funding, and that is essential to us. And when you think through that, they need to understand we won't always have the answers for them to their questions because they are the first funder for the upcoming school year. I'm not sure they know that, at least from the conversations I had with each individual. I don't think they understand that. All right, so zero-based budgeting versus traditional budgeting. Just for formatting, I'll flip those opposite because traditional comes first here. So right now, we would like to be on a zero-based budgeting for Beaufort County schools. However, our behaviors have showed us we're on traditional funding, meaning that we've always walked in and we said, hey, listen, can you give us a 2% increase? We've always asked our state legislators, our teachers need 2% or 5%. But that's not zero-based. Traditional usually analyzes only the new expenditure, meaning if I ask you for more money, this is how I'm going to use it. Zero-based starts exactly from that, zero, where now you as the board, each year, if we do zero-based funding here in Beaufort County Schools authentically, well then you get to evaluate all of our programs with all of our directors, with all of our principals, to really truly decide, is this working for us? Is this not working for us? Is this a need, or do we need to table this, or do we just need to stop doing this? And what I found in a month of working with you is we're always looking at the new money for grants, the new money for programs, but we're not as much understanding the true outcomes of what we currently have now. So as you're walking through your schools and we're talking about iReady, Wit and Wisdom, or you're talking about Common Core, or you're talking about whether PE needs new, equipment, at least every single year you get to start right back at the beginning from where you are in terms of analyzing and justifying the expense. And so at the very bottom of that slide, it aims to drive value for the organization, meaning it gets rid of that statement of we've always done it this way. It eliminates that statement. That we are zero budgeting, and we're going to look at it from year to year to really look at our data, listen to our constituents, and decide whether it's best for kids or not. So then, the next few slides I took from last year's presentation, and then I made it my own. So if you see a slide that says a focus area, this is me converting some of last year's thinking into my new language. And so clearly, we always talk about state level decisions that it may impact funding. But also, we always worry about our student enrollment. And right now, probably around April or May, you'll start getting planning allotments from the state for next year. Notice I talk about zero-based budgeting there. But look at that fifth one down, that prioritizing capital needs. Well, county commissioners who give you capital funding, do they look to you as the board to decide you prioritize your needs? Or how much input do you allow them to weigh on since they're giving you the money? So that goes back to the slide of authentic relationship and through communication. And so as a Board of Education, what Mr. Doan and I want to be able to do is give you that documentation of here are the needs and allow you to prioritize it. And with your approval, I would ask the county commissioners, here's all of what our needs are, not a wish list, and show it all to them so they can start understanding the story. And then they can decide on what the funding is. And then once you get the funding, then you'll decide on how we prioritize that. All right? And as you go down, reaching expectations, you're just setting a new tone, actually. And of course, course offerings versus class sizes. As an example, a middle school may have 30 students in a class. A high school may have 8. But in their allotments, it's 1-to-1 from the state. So we really need to start looking at our course offerings versus our class sizes and understanding that with your employees in the district, although it's unpopular, when you, as a Board of Education, hire new employees, you're hiring them for the district, not hired into that school. And so you are allowed to manipulate and move personnel to fit the needs of your system. So essentially what I'm saying to you is, if you have, just for the conversation, Washington High School, the principal recommends, then the superintendent recommends that candidate to you. Washington High School didn't hire that person. So 3 years down the road, if you have a need at Northside, you do have the ability to transfer that person. And so it's just behaviors. And what I'm noticing in the district is many of our employees, essentially as a former teacher I can say, I owned my classroom. Well, the classroom's yours. And so you have to look at the overall offerings versus class sizes to possibly manipulate your personnel to accommodate the needs of our children. Also, mental health and wellness, this is huge. State Superintendent Mark Johnson is absolutely putting together some opportunities across the state. And to remind you, as a part of good news, we are one of 3 school systems in the state of North Carolina who have qualified for a 5-year grant to really look at wellness, and we'll start providing professional development to our teachers in that area. But if you notice the next 2 bullet points, these are my words. Now, last year you essentially said, hey, we need to have access for all students to all courses. Notice I started with the word equity. So if you're truly providing equity, then you're truly providing access for all children in Beaufort County schools. But at the same time, look at the second equity, that you're truly providing access to all funding streams. So as an example, you as a board get to decide which schools are Title I and which schools are not. And you look at that in terms of their poverty levels. But at the other point too is you as a board can work with Mr. Doan, myself, and Willie Mack to decide which levels of discretionary money get to go to one school versus the other. So it's a large puzzle, but it's something that you need to look at, especially since you have 3 low-performing schools. You're ultimately going to need to create some action. But I think all of us in the room understand, just for the conversation piece, if you have $1 million and you have 5 schools that are Title I, well, if you add a 6th school, you don't get more than $1 million. So funding streams will change in schools if you add or subtract. Moving down, every year you have employee contract decisions, which means that you as a board get to renew or non-renew based on the superintendent's recommendation, but also, so does the employee. They get to decide whether they want to be or not be here. So those are all decisions that Mr. Doan and I worked throughout the spring, but I think your county commissioners need to understand that because it's integral for them to be supportive of the school system in order to attract high-quality talent. If they're out there talking about how they don't want to fund us or our funding is a ridiculous request, that's not going to help us with talent. And then further, as you keep going down, you can read the others. Technology was there last year, safety and security, but I also put in best practices, we need to be more specific as not just cameras, but what are the behaviors in each one of our schools. Class size reduction is a law, marketing, Beaufort County Schools, and of course, the major competition, and this was there last year, stated a different way, I just got to the point. Everybody has school choice now, whether you think they do or not. They have the ability to move. All right, so if you notice, this slide is exactly from last year, so this slide will help your county commissioners if they need any other explanation. But please notice that what is it, ORED? How am I saying that?
Yes, sir.
The ORED? All right, so that specific study through NC State, Brian Alligood reached out to me earlier today and said, listen, that study, you should have your results in about 6 weeks. So as you were searching for a new superintendent, and thank you for allowing me this opportunity, essentially that work stopped. They waited for you as a board to go ahead and finalize the position so they could restart some of the work together. So we expect some of this data to come back to us around mid-March. All right? If you keep going, under challenges and concerns, again, this is a slide from last year looking at your marketing ideas, but we need to be a little bit more urgent and a little bit more aggressive with it. And then the last slide from last year, under class size reduction and possible impacts, that 10 new teachers, I'm likely going to take the 10 out. I'm just going to talk about new teachers. We don't know exactly the number yet, but the key part about it is more about the possible impacts. So as you lower class size each year by state mandate, then in fact, you're going to have to look at spaces inside your buildings. And so I think that's key for county commissioners to understand. All right, so this is a slide that I put my own touch to. So this is our immediate focus area under capital needs. So obviously safety and security, but if you move down further, and this is through the walkthroughs last week, and there's a theme that we need to take a look at, and I'll say it kindly. The third bullet point are the deferred projects. What did you as a board agree to 3 years ago to have performed inside the school system around capital that for some understanding you thought was done but is not done? So we need to study that, and we need to study the why to that, all right? But also your county commissioners are also going to be interested as to the why to that. Meaning if they're funding you for certain projects, what's our conversation of going back to them? And that's why I want to have a quarterly meeting with them to say, here are the projects that the board prioritized, this is in progress, this is complete, or this is postponed, and why. I think that will open up communication on both ends. I left the fourth bullet point there, and I'm seeking your guidance as to whether you'd like to keep that. There has been no BCS conversation concerning new construction, and I'm not sure in the past if that was about building a new school or if that was building a new soccer field. I'm not sure what that bullet point was there for, so I'd be more than happy to take it out, but that's for your thinking. And then notice I asked about the joint committee, education steering committee. But those are the major ticket items that we would then go back on capital. Our ongoing focus, this was part of what you provided last year, meeting the needs of our system, minimizing the cost. So there are a few things that Mr. Doan and I are looking at in the system, and I started sharing some of this knowledge with some of you. But in short, I'll give you a great example. Your transportation actually pays $60,000 to $100,000 of overtime for custodians and others to actually drive, so beyond their own. So as we start looking in the system, if we can actually look at transportation as its own entity and actually have it funneled right through transportation versus each principal being the CEO and having to manipulate the drivers, you may actually have a huge cost savings to that. So in our work session next week, I'm prepared to show you some ways of cost savings if you make it more efficient, more effective, and you really truly do a cost analysis of a few things. All right, so accomplishments, I left it here because these are things that are still in progress, and these are things that I'm still learning about. And so much of this was left from last year, and I did take a few things out that maybe are not as timely anymore. And that's for your viewing pleasure. And then finally, on the last slide, other things to still be excited about, but I also want to caution you on what's measurable and what's not. So when you're working with our county commissioners specifically, and you look at increasing rigor, how is that measurable to a county commissioner? Like, what does that look like? What does that sound like? How do they put a dollar to that? Or if you're raising expectations, how is that measurable to a county commissioner? So when you're walking in and you're asking for them to fund us at 100% of whatever we ask for, right? Well, then they need to have some type of measurables. All right, so considering that, this is the overview, and I'll be happy to add and subtract. Love to have your input on it, whether you think this is where we need to be. And again, it's not meant to show them exactly what capital needs you want to have, but it's meant to really show them what direction you're going. And that's why I put your strategic plan back up here. This is the direction that you agreed to in 5 years that you move forward on. Thoughts, concerns, worries?
I think it looks great.
I do too.
Yeah, I see no problems with them.
Anything you'd like to add, subtract?
Move with caution.
So considering that, I think what I'm very excited about in terms of meeting the county commissioners is the opportunity to take advantage of being new. And when you're new, you don't know all the stories. You might know a few, but you don't know all the stories. And they tend to give you a little bit more latitude in your learning. And so sometimes if you push a little bit harder, they might excuse it just because they think you're new. Okay? But at the same time, I've had really strong conversation with 5 county commissioners. And I'm really excited about their excitement. Your county commissioner chair and I had a fantastic conversation. But at the same time, 3 of them specifically out of the 5 said, when we get to our joint meetings, please don't just talk to us, show us. And so that's why Mr. Doan did a great job of taking photos. That's why, we're going to talk to our teachers, we're going to talk to our maintenance workers, our transportation department. So in fact, we'll have visual evidence for them. Now tomorrow, I will invite all 7 or however many are in attendance to tour the district with me, either individually or together like all of us did. But I felt as though it was very important for you to have the opportunity to see your own district without other possible judgments being next to you. And so I will invite them for February to do a walkthrough with me. All right. Other worries, other concerns, questions you'd like me to put in there, a level of thinking?
I really love what you've put together. I think it's very explanatory, and it opens the door for conversation on some of the bullet points that I think they have had over the years. And during our joint meeting, we've tried in different ways to explain some of the needs, but this is another opportunity. And I think we have at times given them our entire list. Am I right? Of our capital needs, and then there are times where we start paring it down before we give it to them. So I think it's important that they see everything.
Well, and I would agree with that, but I would also always follow your direction. I think if you pare it down before you ever hand it to the funding source, then they don't know your total story.
Right.
And some requests lead into, you do have in some schools a domino effect when you fix this, even in business. In my business, if I put new carpet in one room, it makes the other room look absolutely awful.
Sure.
And so I think if they see the whole thing, they see why we're requesting this, because we know we have to take baby steps. We know that. But that doesn't, sometimes I just feel like we don't ever start with a baby step and nothing gets done.
Well, and on the flip side, in my experience, your county commissioners sometimes feel like that one-stop shop where you're driving through the town, you hit the mini mart, and then you keep going to your destination, which is not in that town. Well, that's why I'm asking for quarterly meetings. If you keep them involved and they understand your story, if they understand your story, then you don't have to put this huge presentation together every year and hope. And so with that, I'm hoping more than anything to establish an authentic relationship tomorrow.
Everybody on board with this?
Yeah, they need to see the the full needs. I mean, as most of you do, I know every one of the county commissioners, most of y'all do, speak to most of them on a regular basis. They're big boys and folks. They need to see what our needs are, because we have projects that, you know, Carolyn, that we've had on there that we end up compromising what's going on because we negotiate with our own self.
Right.
Rather than them, and they end up being just like one of the slides. They end up being a 015 project, a 016 project, a 017 project, a 018, and they never, ever get addressed. And a small problem becomes a big problem. They need to see it all, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I think just piggybacking on that is when you show them, you know, here are all the needs, but then you show them your prioritized list after they've given you the funding amount. Well, on that list, if you decide to pause that work, well, in that quarterly meeting, you go back and you say to the county commissioners, we're going to pause this work, and here's why. That way you eliminate those types of feelings of where they feel like they're giving you the money, but they're not sure if you're really using it in the way that you said you would. And so it's just a nice way of having internal controls, checks and balances, and you're putting honesty right up there with integrity. I think that could work.
Sounds
for us.
fine to me.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now, 5.3, we're at the Higher Heights update. Mr. Doan?
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make the board aware of the conversation with Ms. Edison, and she informed me that unfortunately at this time she is having to shut down the Higher Heights nonprofit. And she does have an intern from the Partnership of Children that will be working throughout the spring, but certainly without the organization itself, the resources won't be there. That organization has worked with the school system for the last 10 years. She does hope that she might return if she's able to find some other funding sources, but certainly I knew that Ms. Evison has presented this board before and that you would all be interested to know, so that I didn't want you to hear it out in the community until you heard it from us first.
Right, I think funding is an issue for a lot of programs this year.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, moving on to our closed session. I think Mr. Allen will
Yep.
discuss.
I move that we go into closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 and 8 to prevent disclosure of confidential personnel files under GS 115C-321.
You have a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We are in closed session. All right, we've had a motion and a vote to come out of closed session. So now that we're out of closed session, we're going to reopen our meeting to I need a motion to approve our personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. We're going to move right on to our budget amendment. As Mr. Willie Mack came breezing in the room, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you. The budget amendment that you all have, I first want to apologize. I thought I had given you a budget amendment for your October 2nd meeting, but you all changed it for your interview processes, so when I looked in my folder, I didn't have one approved. So this budget amendment is quite lengthy. Your first column that you'll see in each of the funds will show that your beginning budget, and that budget column has to match your budget resolution each year. And then the amended are your current budgets based on the allotments of revenues that we have received or changed throughout the year based on our planning allotments that we did during the budget cycle. So just in a quick summary, our state allotments from our original budget resolution, our state budget increased $776,316.50. Your local budget, if you'll notice, decreased by $235,509. This, if you'll recall, was when we approved, or you all approved your budget for the new year. You sent us back to reduce the fund balance appropriation. So that budget fund balance went from $508,479 to $272,970. Your federal budgets, They came in pretty late this year. Some or most came in the first part of November. We actually had one that got approved today. So your federal budget increased from its original budget resolution by $4,003,652.26. Your capital outlay budget increased by $565,984.30. Part of this has to do with the projects from the fiscal year 18 that were not completed, so we needed to bring those dollars forward, as well as the bus lease that we get from the state of North Carolina. But I also want you to note that there is an error on your fiscal year 18 projects. It shows a credit of $187,990.07. That actually should be a debit of $26,945.57. I like that a formula by error. Your next one is your child nutrition program. The grants shifted a little bit, so that budget increased by $15,870.33. And then you'll see your Fund 6, which is your school fund, Fund 7, your after-school program, and Fund 8, which are our grants and special local projects that we have. Those were not included in your original budget resolution because those are carryovers, and we don't know what they are until the end of the year. So those were budgeted. The Fund 6 is budgeted currently at $1,207,102.73. Your after-school program is budgeted at $159,298.78, and your Fund 8 or grants or local grants fund is currently budgeted at $1,735,553.83. A big piece of that Fund 8 is your pre-K program, and that grant was $537,600.
All right, are there any questions? It's a lot to digest at one time.
If y'all have any questions, give me a call and I'll walk you through it.
Thank you, thank you. So do we want to move on now? Was that all that we needed to look at?
That, I need that budget amendment approved.
Yeah, but I mean, was there a difference between the administrative content and the executive content? I have two links.
Yeah, I got two. That's what I was going to ask. I hadn't opened up the second.
Two are the same.
Okay, I hadn't opened up the second one. Okay. All right, I need a motion then to approve the amended budget amendment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Ms. Duke has for you a yellow printout. This is basically what Mr. Cheeseman and I have worked on to try to give you some type of a monthly report on the various programs and the various funds for the school system. A couple of things that I might need to explain to you. If you look at your column heading, when it refers to an S...
They don't have it in front of them.
I'm sorry.
Hold on.
Give us a second.
I'll slow down.
Brother,
You're good.
you got the hammer down.
Go ahead.
Your first column is it says total budget, which means your current budget. The second column is your year-to-date expenditures. Those are ones that have been processed and checks have been cut and mailed. The next column, it says a year-to-date escrow, and that is where the teacher who is employed for 10 months sets her payments up for 12 months. So these are the summer withholding for those summer checks that they will receive. An outstanding encumbrance is a purchase order that is currently has not been paid against or paid in full. And then the other ones are basically percentages based on those different columns. And if you all would look...
The far right side is the remaining budget for the rest of the year.
Yes, sir.
The rest of this school year.
Rest of this school
Which
year
would
through
end
June
June
30th.
Yes, sir.
So a lot to digest. However, just on the top sheet, because I know he might go a little bit further, but we wanted you to have knowledge around what does school finance look like? And more specifically, when we talk about PRC, can you tell them what PRC is?
Program.
All right. So when you talk about the different programs, what are the names assigned to them? So when principals speak with you about their programs and they're using budget code names, now you'll have an idea to really start looking at, well, what does funding streams look like? Or what do they look like? And as I presented earlier around equity, how do you know where the money is going and how do you know it's being used? And so as you walk through our schools and you look at programs inside our classrooms, as you walk through school nutrition, as you walk into the maintenance garage, whatever it might be, you'll now have a general understanding of how we split that $70 million out and what that looks like. So it's the beginning steps. Anything else you want to add to it?
Next, sir.
All right. So, but if you notice, the way he's compiled this, a lot of information that keeps going through, but I'm hoping that you may be able to just sit down and start playing with it and start asking, yourself some questions and then write those questions down as a starting point of what does it mean, what does it look like for next year, how you can use this information. But as your constituents call you and say, why not, or why so, or how come, you're going to be able to answer some of that now with a little bit of knowledge. So I think this is our starting place for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And so next Tuesday during your work session, if we truly create it as a work session, then you'll be able to start looking at your capital needs and we can start giving you a glimpse of, what you were looking for last year and then how it played out fiscally this year. All right.
I had a question. I'm sure somewhere in there, if I had the time to study this earlier, I would know more about it. But for instance, I know some of these are self-explanatory, but when we get down to the textbooks and digital resources, for instance, and there's an allotment of money, how is that truly dispersed? Because is it dispersed based on the enrollment at each school? Is there a percentage? Like certainly a school with 600 students will have a greater financial need than a school with 280 students. So how is that done?
So first of all, congratulations, because this is exactly what I want you to be able to do, is ask these types of questions. So good for you.
Yeah.
So, all right, sincerely, I think that's a great question.
What page are you on?
She's on
I'm on the second page.
second page, mostly all the way down. Yeah, it's actually the end.
Yeah, classroom, yeah.
I'm with you, good.
All
I was
right,
going
so-
for something that I think every school uses.
So right now, the district actually has $494,000 and some change to it in your textbook fund. And the state has actually changed the restrictions to where you can, at one time, move that money into other avenues. But right now, they've pulled back and said, look, we want you to use it for what it's intended for. But also, school districts typically have an adoption process, typically on a 5-year cycle around textbooks and software programs. And the moment you go away from that process, well, then it's whoever has the greatest communicated need. And so right now, I spoke with Ms. Lilly in curriculum instruction to talk about, can we get that adoption process back so you as a board know, do we need social studies this year? Do we need science this year? And then we can appropriately work with our vendors in a 6-month timeline before school ever starts again for the next year to make sure we have all of that approval. But to answer your question, who decides? Well, it's based off of 1, the protocol that you as the board establish, and then 2, what the needs are of the school. And that's why we're handing this to you, so you can start asking those types of questions, so you can start making decisions on these needs of your schools.
Okay. I know a lot, you get into your middle school and high school curriculums, and they're more heavily dependent, I would think, on the digital resources versus the textbooks. Is that correct?
In this moment, yes, but what you also need to consider is, what are the consumables that young people use? Meaning, what are the workbooks that are given out in kindergarten through grade 5 that they write straight in? Or which teachers are actually taking one of those books and legally photocopying it, and the kids write off of the paper? So a lot of questions that go along that line item that we need to put in some procedures to district-wide.
Okay.
And a great example, at your P.S. Jones School Improvement Team meeting, your social studies department turned around and said, listen, it's really time for us to adopt a new book. However, other people in the district think that you already have not so long ago, but that doesn't tell you how many years ago. So again, great question, and that's what we need to start diving into.
Anybody else?
Can I ask a question relating over to capital? But I think Willie Mack, I'm gonna kind of direct, at least listen up, because you would know the answer to this, I know. I have the 2018-19 current capital list that we approved last year. We used to got an update. I'm not saying it came from you, you just happened to be here. You probably asked Stan this, but he's not here. We used to get an update, you recall, of just the items that we approved on the capital list. And it would give us an update. I think we got it monthly, and I know we did got it monthly. And it would show us if we allotted $40,000 for a project, if the project had been done, how much was spent, left over or extra we spent, whatever. But the main thing was, it gave us a running total all the time of what of the projects that we approved were being done. For instance, like last week when we were walking to schools, I was asked a couple of times in the presence of, I think, Mr. Cheeseman and some others, about needing a walk behind or ride, this is a simple thing. Scrubber. Well, we approved a lot of that kind of thing in the contract. Well, I'd like to know, have we bought any of those, or have we not bought any of those? Mainly, I'll just stop it. A list of the projects we approved, and where are we at on them? We're halfway through the year. What's been done, what's not been done, what's been spent, where are we at? Because we're getting ready to do capital again.
Right.
I'd like to know where we're at on the current before I fix another one.
So we'll make sure that we have that at our work
And you
session.
remember, Lisa, what I'm talking, she will remember exactly the form I would get, what all the board members would get, but we would get it on a regular basis, and I haven't seen one in quite a while.
So we'll bring that to you Tuesday.
Okay.
I use that report in talking with Stan about where his projects are when he brings his presentation to you.
Yeah.
And if you all would like that in detail, it shows you, I believe Ms. Harrell began giving you your capital under a fiscal year category, which ones you funded. It will show you what your budget currently is, what it's been expended,
Right.
and the remaining balance.
And it was a fairly short report. This report that I have were all the capital needs, and then we highlighted in the ones we approved and the ones that we carried over to a 3 to 5 year plan. But once you bring it into what we approved, it was like a 1-pager, maybe at the most a 2-pager.
Mm-hmm.
But you could look at it real quick and say, hey,
We used to go over that with
we put
Stan.
$20,000 against this
Right.
project.
We
We've
haven't
been-
seen that in months.
We're 6 months down the road. Why are we not even working on this?
And I'd like to
I haven't
add
seen it in
something, and I don't
a
know if
while.
this adds
It's
to
months.
your to-do
It has
list
been
or
months.
Stan's, but many times, we had, over the years, had to sacrifice one project to pay for a leaking roof or something. And I'm not questioning that at all. What I'm asking is, as you develop this capital project list for us, I would love to be reminded why, if we didn't do a particular project because we had to sacrifice it for something else, that may help me more than just to see we didn't do it. Like Terry said, why didn't we do it? Did we just not do it yet because we don't have the funds? And we don't have the funds because we sacrificed that project for something that became a priority, a leaking classroom, whatever. But I forget from time to time, when we have had an update, I forget what we've agreed to sacrifice or put aside. I'm saying sacrifice, to put aside and kick that down the road a little further. If you could remind us, just a little sidebar, this has not been completed because, so I'm not going to jump in to think, it hasn't been completed because we just haven't done it yet. If there's a reason, then remind us.
But, Madam Chairman, and in the past, I know exactly what we've done that, but generally that'll only affect just a very small handful of projects. Whereas I know there's been times in the past where we would be more than halfway through the year and not done 10% of the projects. And that's why I want to know where we're at.
Well, I think for those of us that were on the tours, we did see 2 or 3 things that have been on our list repeatedly for several years
Right.
since I've been on the board.
And I don't want these.
And usually they haven't been
Show
done
can.
because of funding, but sometimes they haven't been done because we chose to sacrifice that and put it a little lower on the priority list. But we never intended for it to be removed from the list. Does that make sense?
the reports that I generate are usually the ones that have a funding component, and I think Dr. Phipps and Lisa, did you all not do that piece on a separate form? And maybe, if you like, maybe we can see if some way we can merge it.
That would
just
be
as a
great,
book.
if you can think of a way.
I knew, Lisa knows exactly what I'm asking for.
Maybe we can put that summary sheet of the projects that were moved
That's
as the
right.
last page of the ones
She's
that
the
were
key.
currently funded.
I think some that maybe are 5 or 6 years old have just dropped off the list. But the need is still there.
Oh, I'm only concerned about the ones we approved for 18-19, and where are we at on those
I'm talking about
projects
some of the
right now?
ones that the principal almost quit requesting them because we still hadn't done
The
them.
bathrooms, the
Well,
bathrooms.
they used to be on the back of that sheet that Terry's talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
And we've moved them, we've moved them out because we didn't have funding.
Right.
In case some money
Exactly.
showed up for no reason at all.
Right, exactly, so we could move it back in.
Right, I want us to have that ability to move it back in because the
I knew
funding's
somebody
there.
would remember it other than me.
Before
Oh,
we
yeah.
jump in and fund something
Numbers.
new.
And Mr.
Okay.
Cheeseman hadn't been here for just not quite a
Oh,
month. Let's
that's why I
give him
didn't
time
ask
to
you.
develop his system. And
Oh, that's why I didn't
we'll-
ask
we'll-
you.
So far, he is doing a fantastic
I
job of
guarantee he'll
getting
come up
us-
with a plan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
You'll figure that one.
He's going to show him.
And I'm going to let him continue on now. We're on 7.3 on child nutrition, the HVAC.
This is for the plant operations, and Willie Mack, I'll defer to you on this. Please share with them the information that you learned from FEMA.
I was finally able to get with our program delivery manager with FEMA, Mr. Robert Caton. Essentially, the program that we're looking at is a buyout, possible relocation. However, the trigger on qualifying in that program, as I understand it, is that the property has to be damaged by more than 50% of its current value and basically can't be repaired. I believe the damages on the plant ops building on the insurance settlement statement was somewhere around $262,000. On our insurance policy, that building is valued at $1.3 million. So based on the percentages and qualifications, we're not going to qualify to meet the threshold for that program. Now, speaking with the chairman earlier, of the $260,000 roughly that we have received, about $133,000 has been spent on the gutting and clearing out. That again was kind of somewhat directed by our flood insurance adjuster, that you've got people in the building, you need to get this stuff cleaned out. And so that's where we are on the bids that you all have tonight.
And so considering that, moving forward to rebuild, you have 2 bids in front of you. Does everyone see what those are?
Yes.
Somebody can read.
And so if you can just take a look at that take a look at that for a moment so you have some knowledge.
Question?
Yes, sir.
I mean, has anyone looked over these to make sure the work is the same on these 2 bids? Because, I mean, for a bid that's just over $100,000, one's $59,000 less than the other bid. I mean, we're assuming they're doing the exact same work according to the
Yes,
RFP we put out.
and our goal was to really hope to have a 3rd bid,
Yeah.
so you can really see if one is truly an outlier, but we did not get that. But do you want to comment on what's included?
On the third bid requirement, we did, being that we're a small rural and limited in contractors, we did write a statement so FEMA or an insurance could allow us to only have the 2 bids. As far as the bid specs, those were what we laid out for the bidders to submit their proposals on. Moving forward, it would be sure to make sure that we're following the specs as they were provided, and they did place the bid.
And how much insurance money, again, did we say we had for this project?
I believe it was $261,000.
Yes.
And we received about $11,000 in content.
Right, and you spent $133,000.
Right.
So you had, based on this bid, you should be about $4,884.
There are a couple of pieces that came in where we actually went in and took out the carpet thinking that was a short solution, and then when we found out the water had actually wicked up the walls, so we probably have an additional $5,000 charges on top of that 130.
Other questions?
Madam Chair, I think we better table this one till we get some more information.
That's fine.
Okay, what additional information, Mac, do you?
Well,
are
you're talking about a third bid, and there's quite a difference in the two bids. So, are we talking about relocating?
No, based
he
off
said
of
we're
what
not gonna be able
FEMA,
Not, I didn't think that was my
no,
understanding.
this would be a rebuild, so you're
A
rebuilding
rebuild.
where you are.
Well, I think that,
And these bids were actually also sent to Tharrington Smith for their approval on the writing and to make sure about, I mean, not to say that anybody from Tharrington Smith measured the building, but my point is that they were there to oversee in terms of making sure that it was written, the scope was written so that it should match the people that applied or bid for the job would understand what they were responsible for supplying.
And, like the concern is here, there's a large enough discrepancy. Who has read them to make sure, I haven't read through them word for word, so that in the first much lower bid, are we getting everything, I'm assuming, we getting everything that matches the scope?
Yes, they did not write the narrative for their bid. That is a standard narrative
They're
that they
just
both
agreeing. They
bid
just
it
gave you-
off of.
They're agreeing to what we sent out.
Correct.
That
For
we're
our-
requesting be done?
For our standpoint, it's in the management part of the construction itself to make sure that those details are being met.
Okay.
If
we
you don't
stay
think we're
with
gonna get a third bid, this is it. So we might as
I
well
will make the
move on.
motion then.
Are you,
These-
excuse me, are you waiting to get approval that we don't need a third bid, or have you gotten that?
I've gotten that from FEMA. She said the only
He's
thing I
gotten that
had
approval then, because of the size of our community.
We're not gonna get it.
Keep going.
the 30, I believe these bids had a 30-day window, so if we do not approve them tonight, then we will need to rebid the project.
Make the motion.
Okay, back, you want to state your motion?
You may.
No, it sounds like we better go ahead with it.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get a third.
Okay.
anyway.
Okay.
Can I entertain a motion from somebody
Move approval,
for
the lowest bid.
the lowest bid, which will be the first one by, is it DB&H Commercial Contractors? Do I have a
I'll
second?
go in with you, I'll be second.
I just hope we
You're gonna
get
be
what we're supposed to get.
Are you seconding?
I'm gonna second it.
And Terry's seconded. Any questions? Any comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion carried. Motion carried. All right, field trips.
So attached, you should see 2 field trips that have been proposed for your consideration. The Skills Club at Southside High School going to a state conference and competition. Please recognize total number of students and total number of chaperones. But also, we just received the Northside High School request for approval. Now, this is the golf team seeking in advance your approval so they can make in advance reservations in case they win to go to the golf state tournament. Which I love a team that's confident.
I do too.
They've been, what, 2 or 3 years in a row?
All right, so with that, they believe that they're going to do it again, so they're asking you in advance so they can make the,
And they wanna get their bookings in before it's.
definitely.
Right.
It's fine.
They can
That
still
makes-
get a hotel.
Yeah,
That's
that makes
right.
sense.
They can easily catch.
That's not an hour and a half away.
That's right.
Pinehurst and May books up long
Yeah,
before that.
quickly.
So with that, I'm asking you for your approval.
Can I have a motion? Okay, we've got numerous motions and seconds, all in approval, so can we have a vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carried, and I hope that we are going to see them go. All right. Resolution for calendar flexibility, once again, Mr. Cheeseman.
First, I want to thank Lisa Duke for researching some of this information for us, specifically around days missed. But as presented to you is the resolution seeking greater flexibility of school calendar that we explained last time we met. So in front of you is the resolution that, should you approve it this evening, we'll send back to the School Board Association, which they'll share with our state legislators. And yes, much of Northeast North Carolina school boards have actually either completed this or will be completing this process by the end of the month.
So moved by EC, and second by Mac. Is that all right?
Right.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed, motion carried. I do have a question. Did you get any comments from county commissioners that might support this resolution?
So I'll speak with them again about it tomorrow, but your association, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners did a resolution which essentially blankets all of your county commissioners. And so I can suggest to them doing their own.
Yeah, it never hurts to have a second one. All right, we're going to keep on going. We got the calendar for February, and we discussed at our last meeting that we would go back to the first and third Tuesday of the month. Is that still good for everyone?
It's still at 5:30?
Still at 5:30. And what I did tonight was ask ask Nicole if she would make sure that all of the character ed recipients were here. And I told her that I'd probably do that every time we had that, so that if they were not, we'll just at that meeting bump that a little further so that they all can be recognized at the same time, if that's okay with the board. So we're on for, what is the first and?
5th and the 19th.
5th and the 19th at 5:30? All right, for February. Will there be any other additional meetings? I know at one time you talked about wanting a retreat. Do you want to put that off until you've done something with the commissioners, or?
What I'd like to do is see which direction you'd like to go after your work session next Tuesday, where we bring the capital information to you, and then you can decide your work sessions or your retreat in that regard. So to see what other time you need for it.
Okay, that sounds fine. So we're on for the 5th and the 19th. 8.2, board member updates. Ms. Booth, you have something to share with us, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do. I would like to, Mr. Cheeseman, I don't know if you've been introduced to this project yet, but we are talking about the P.S. Jones Memorial Park. I would like for the board to get some information on that. This is the beginning of the year. The P.S. Jones Memorial Park was started with the grant from KB Reynolds, who gave us a $200,000
Get ready to say, wait a minute.
Wow.
$200,000 grant. And that grant agreement was signed between the City of Washington and the Beaufort County Board of Education on June 8th, 2015. And I'm basically wanting you to bring the board up to where we are at this time. The completions from that grant, it consists of the restrooms that was done by the City of Washington. We had the pavilion and the track that was built and installed by Stock and Taylor. We have the water bottle filler and the digital locks on the restrooms that was done by DB&H, and also the black chain link fence which is installed, and that fence completed the first phase of the park. We are now going with the second phase of the park, and we are working, or we are in the process of getting shrubbery around the park to keep going what we are doing. The alumni committee and the community is doing fundraisers. We're doing a memorial, brick memorial, and we are also, we have our own Southside carpenter shop that's doing the tables for us for the park, and those tables are also being paid for by the alumni and the community. We are also doing benches. They're being paid also. The city is offering us another $1,000 grant for on the shrubbery, We are waiting on, as soon as we can get the shrubbery in place, we're waiting for that check. And also would like for you to know that the city and the county commissioners gave us $1,000 each on that. Was it 1,000 or 500? I'm sorry, 500. I'm sorry, $5,000
Yes, for the
each
fence.
on that. Yeah, on the fence. Yes, on that. And as I stated before, that I did speak with Adam Linker, who is the regional person for the KB Reynolds grant, and he has assured me that we would qualify for an additional grant for the park. And I'd like for the board members, anybody who have not seen the park, to just, all you gotta do is ride by. Just ride by and see what's being done over there. This park, Mr. Cheeseman, is held at the playing field at the back of EdTech. That's where it is, yes. So hopefully by the summer, we will have received the additional grant from KB Reynolds, and we will be ready to put the playground equipment in the park.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Booth. Next, we'll just keep going down the line. Matt brought us just an update.
Update from our January 16th meeting over at NERS, just to keep you guys in the loop.
Right, so.
My report's not as fancy as Ms. Booth's, so please just take it home and read on a rainy day, okay?
Well, we thank you for doing that, Mac. I appreciate it.
All
Are
right.
there any other? And Terry?
Just to ask, is Mike Proctor Memorial Dedication this Friday night? Is anybody planning on being? I mean, I think
Yes.
I'll be there. Is anybody?
Yes.
Friday,
Okay, I'll just see
yeah.
who I need to look for.
Yes, I'm gonna go.
Oh, okay.
Friday at
Planning on being
7.
there.
Yeah.
Was there a
It's a
particular?
halftime.
Was it halftime of boys or
Well,
halftime of girls?
girls. The girls' game starts, he said, at 6.
Round 6.
And so he anticipated probably around 7.
So it'll be halftime of girls' game.
And I did ask him, for those that are going to attend, that regardless of the situation of the game, it would not be prior to 7. So if you got there at 6:55, you will not have missed it, because I said, please don't start it at 6:40, and we're all trying to get there at 7, and Charles said it would be at 7.
Okay, thanks.
So, Miss Pete, since we're going down, do you have any board member updates for us?
Thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you, though.
Thank you. And my update happens the whole meeting. Mr. Allen?
I'm good to go. I did the 3 tours and was enlightened by the 3 of the tours, and I'm sorry I was too busy to get to the other ones. So.
I do want to thank everybody that was able to go. I went on all of them, but we had different board members that could go to different schools, and I did get feedback from principals. They were just so happy that we went on the tours. They always are, but they were appreciative. And so there wasn't a single school that didn't have at least 2 board members on the tour, so I thank you all very much. It comes at a very busy time. And we drove down to Aurora in a monsoon. I've never seen so much rain.
I think over half the time I go to Aurora, it rains.
So much rain. And of course, I got behind every 18-wheeler that was carrying petroleum, going 60 miles an hour. Mr. Draper?
I have nothing.
Well, all right. We were going to pass it on now to Mr. Cheeseman.
To provide you an update, so I've been here for 4 weeks now, and I want to say thank you, headed on my 5th. In that time, just to give you an update, I've attended 7 school improvement team meetings. I've visited 14 schools. I've met with all the directors individually, all the principals individually, principals as an entire group. We'll host a principal meeting Thursday, I believe at Snowden, where principals will start learning about effective walkthrough processes that will help with instruction. Specifically, I've been formulating a data sheet for all of you in terms of looking at the barriers and needs of each school. So as I go to the school improvement team meetings, I'm openly asking the employees what they think are the barriers we need to knock down for them in order for them to be successful in their employment, which would ultimately help us with our student outcomes. Additionally, I'm working closely to review with potential reorganization ideas for your maintenance team, your transportation, and your school nutrition in terms of its efficiency, effectiveness versus its cost. That would be something that I would bring to you over the next 30 days, where each one of those directors has an understanding of what the ultimate goals are based on the meeting I had with he or she, and that would look for a July 1 implementation. And just to give you a quick knowledge, that would mean, for example, in transportation, really centering it upon Jerry and his team, instead of having your principals and assistant principals try to hire bus drivers. And so just some different organization for your consideration. And then finally, although there are some really amazing, great things going on at your schools, just to highlight Snowden Elementary for a moment, the principal there has asked, and thanks to Willie Mack, and really thinking about funding, 10 of your employees are scheduled to go to the Ron Clark Academy on March 15th for professional development, for strategies that would help low-performing schools come out of low-performing. And so with that, Willie Mack, congratulations to him to really isolate that type of funding based on the principal and school improvement team's request. So that's what authentic relationships and great communication do for your principals and your teachers. So congratulations. And then,
Good job.
and then finally, I attended the Rotary meeting yesterday down at King Chicken.
The noon Rotary.
So the noon Rotary, but also I will be transferring my membership as a Rotarian out of Hertford into this group. So just so you understand, community involvement will be a plus in that regard. All right. So, and that's my update.
And you spoke to Evening Rotary last week?
So I spoke to a different Rotary club outside of town. So I still had final obligations in my former place of employment, and so last Thursday night, I was unable to attend Eastern's excitement with the Math Carnival because I had an obligation where I was the guest speaker for 15 students being inducted into Rotary's Interact Club. And that was something I committed to about 4 months ago, so that has finalized my commitments at my former employment. So with that.
So I did go to the Math Carnival, and it was my first Math Carnival, and I was really impressed. And the highlight of my night, if you've never been, I would ask you to try to go next year, even if only for a few minutes. They go through the paces, and every pod or group of teachers had different math exercises that they would do in the form of a game. And at the end of the game, win or lose, they were allowed to take those math manipulatives, whatever they happened to be in that game, they were allowed to take them home. The parents were interactive in the game so that when they took that game home, those math problems and those math games could be done at home. And this little boy looked up when he didn't win, so he was a little disappointed, and then they said, well, try again. So he was doing something on a board. It was calculating a problem. He got it right the second time, and they said, you get to take all of that home. And he looked at her, and he said, you don't mean it, do you? And she said, I mean every word. So they had him in little Ziploc bags, and he took the game home. So it looked, the kids were having a blast, and so I'm thankful. That was a lot of hard work by that staff, but I do suggest going again. So we do mean it, young man. You get to take those math things home. And with that, it was at Eastern. Isn't it their, is it their Title I night?
Yes.
Yes. So, but all the kids are, and it's all about math. So that was great. So with that said, if there's nothing else, I entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. All right, don't be opposed. Thank you, everybody.